Thank you. Next witness, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. State calls Dawn Claycomb.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God? I swear. Thank you. Please have a seat. Your witness stand and state your full name for the record. Please spell your last name.
Dawn Claycomb, C-L-A-Y-C-O-M-B.
Good afternoon, Ms. Claycomb.
Good afternoon.
Where are you currently employed?
Duke Energy in Charlotte, North Carolina.
And in what capacity?
Digital forensics investigator.
Where did you work in March and April of 2019?
At the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division.
Is that also known as SLED?
Yes, also known as SLED.
And how long were you with SLED?
Almost 7 years.
In what capacity were you employed with SLED?
I was a crime scene agent at SLED.
And generally, what were some of your day-to-day responsibilities for that job?
Responding to any crime scene requests throughout the state of South Carolina. That includes death investigations, officer-involved shootings, child fatalities, and any follow-up scenes that would be necessary, such as an autopsy or any follow-up processing.
Were you contacted regarding an investigation involving the murder and kidnapping of Samantha Josephson?
Yes, I was.
Did you become involved with that investigation?
Yes, I did.
And what was the extent of your involvement?
I responded to her autopsy at the Medical University of South Carolina.
And did you collect any items from the autopsy?
Yes, I did. I collected swabs from her right and left ankles.
Did you collect any items of the victim's clothing while you were there?
Yes, that was also transferred over to me after the autopsy was completed.
Did you take any post-mortem prints of the
Yes, post-mortem major case prints. They're basically inked known impressions from the hands and feet this was after the autopsy.
I'm approaching with what's been marked as, for identification purposes, as State's Exhibit 191. Do you recognize that item?
Yes, ma'am. These are the swabs.
And swabs from what exactly?
Swabs from the right ankle, from her right ankle, as well as her left ankle.
And when you say her, you mean?
Samantha Josephson.
And that's the victim in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
And those items in that I just handed you, those are the actual swabs that you took?
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, Your Honor, State would ask to enter item 191 into evidence.
No objection.
Submitted.
Ms. Claycomb, you mentioned that you collected some other items from the autopsy.
Yes, ma'am.
And that included clothing items.
Yes, ma'am.
And what is the process generally of taking prints from a deceased victim?
Generally, we commonly collect known inked impressions from the hands after an autopsy is completed. That's to have a known standard to be compared to any unknown fingerprints that may be collected as seen.
And when the prints are taken, are the extremities cleaned at that time, or might they have other things on them?
Typically, once the autopsy is completed, they've already been cleaned. The hands have been cleaned at that point. We may document any wounds we may see to the hands, and then we place ink, would be black ink, onto the palms of the hands to collect those known impressions of the ridges.
And you mentioned you would take photographs of the extremities prior to prints?
Yes, if there are any wounds, to document the wounds.
I'm approaching with what's been ID'd as State's Exhibit 222, 223, 224, 225, 226, and 227. Do you recognize those photographs?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And what is on those photographs?
This first photograph is a picture
Ms. Claycomb, I apologize. Just generally, what do those depict?
of
What
the
kind
hands
process?
and the feet.
And are those the photographs that you took of Samantha Josephson at autopsy?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, State asks that the aforementioned items are entered into evidence.
Never previous objection.
They are admitted.
Ms. Claycomb, if you could show the jury, I believe there's a couple photos in there. Do they depict injuries?
Yes, they do. This first one, I can show this.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
This first one here is of her right palm. And you can see the wound.
Ms.
That's-
Claycomb, I apologize. What item number is on the back there?
This is 222.
And what does 222 depict?
This is a photograph of her right palm with a wound to the palm. This is the back side of her right hand. This is the other side of the wound on her right hand.
And Ms. Claycomb, what item number is that?
223. This is a photograph of the bottom of her right foot, and this is State's Exhibit 224.
And is that how the foot would appear prior to taking a print?
Yes, correct. No ink on it. This is just a close-up photo, still again of her right foot, just not the entire foot, and this is State's Exhibit 225.
Do you notice anything on the bottom of her foot there?
There's just some discoloration in the foot. This photograph is of her left hand, the back side of her left hand. This is State's Exhibit 226.
Do you notice any discoloration on that photo?
Yes, there appear to be small scratches and some discoloration in the hand as well. This is a close-up photo of her right hand. It would be just the fingers, more of the fingertips or the nail beds. This is State's Exhibit 227.
Do you notice any discoloration in the nails?
Yes, there's some discoloration in the nails as well.
approaching with what's been marked as State's Exhibit 183 and 184 for identification purposes. Ms. Claycomb, do you recognize the envelopes that I just handed you?
Yes, ma'am. Both of these items are the post-mortem major case prints from the hands and the feet.
Let's start with item 183. If you could you please open that up for us?
Yes, ma'am. State's Exhibit 183.
And what is that?
These are the inked post-mortem prints from the hands. As you can see, these are...
Just for ID purposes for right now. And Ms. Claycomb, are these the handprints that you took in April of 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, State asks item 183 be entered in evidence.
State moves that those items be admitted into evidence. What says the defense?
No objection.
They're admitted.
And permission to publish to the jury, Your Honor?
Yes. You may publish any items that are in evidence
Thank you, Your Honor.
So
without requesting the court's permission.
Thank you, Your Honor.
these are the inked impressions from the hands. As you can see, there's 4 strips. There's a square on each strip that just represents the fingertips from each hand. Ink's placed on the hand just to represent the ridges on the hand, and then it's placed onto the strips. These are palm cards. Basically, it's to document the larger areas of the hand on the palm of the hand, the palm itself, the thumb side, the pinky side, as well as down to the wrist. You can see here the wrist area, the palm, here's the full palm, and then full fingers, as well as the upper palm and the full fingers to the tips. And there's 2 typically done for one hand. You can see here the full palm. This was the right palm that had the wound, and that's documented as well, because obviously in that area the ridge detail may be disturbed.
Thank you, Ms. Claycomb. As for item States 184, would you mind opening that envelope as well?
State's Exhibit 184.
Yes, ma'am.
These are the inked known impressions from the bottom or the soles of Samantha's feet.
And are those the impressions that you took?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, State moves for item 184 to be entered into evidence.
Object.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Claycomb. You may show the jury.
Again, these are similar to the hands, but obviously from the feet, the 4 strips with each box of the tips of the toes, very similar to the fingertips. And then a full impression after inked of the right and left foot from toe to heel. And then again, similar to the hands, broken down into sections of the foot, kind of midfoot to toe, midfoot to toe, midfoot to toe, and then tips of the toes. And similar on the other side. And this is similar to what I just showed you, but this is the left foot. And same again, similar to the ones I just showed you. These are the right.
Thank you, Ms. Claycomb. I'm approaching with what's been marked previously as states 214 to 218. Do you recognize those photographs?
Yes, ma'am, these were the pants collected from Samantha during the autopsy.
And do the photographs of those pants fairly and accurately depict the pants that you collected that day at the autopsy?
Yes, ma'am, yes, they do.
So
Your Honor, state moves for states 214 to 218 be entered into evidence.
with regard to those exhibits, were there any objection to any of those exhibits now being offered?
I didn't believe so, Your Honor.
Well, I've already ruled on the admissibility of them.
Right. Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Claycomb, could you please show a couple of the photographs to the jury and explain what they are?
Yes, ma'am, this is the State's Exhibit 218. This is a photo of the front of the pants. This is an overall of the rear of the pants, State's Exhibit 214, and this was with a scale in it that a defect was observed within the pants. This is a close-up photo of the upper waist area of the pants, State's Exhibit 217. This is a close-up photograph of one of the defects on the pants, State's Exhibit 215. And another defect, State's Exhibit 216 on the pants.
Thank you, Ms. Claycomb. I'm approaching with what's been marked as states 185. Do you recognize that page? Thank you.
It's one pair of black in color, size 6 with suspected blood from Samantha Josephson.
And are those the pants that you collected from autopsy?
Yes.
State moves to enter item 185 into evidence, Your Honor.
Objection.
They're admitted without objection.
Among the other items that you collected, do you recall what those included?
As far as clothing items,
Yes, ma'am.
yes, there were sandals, a bra, a bralette, and a kind of an overshirt, kind of a mid. It wasn't a full-length shirt; it was a mid-level shirt.
I'm approaching with what's been marked as State's Exhibit 190. Ms. Claycomb, do you recognize that item?
This was an earring that was collected from her right ear during the autopsy.
Is that the earring that you collected?
Yes.
Your Honor, State moves to enter item 190 into evidence.
No objection.
So moved.
Could you please show the jury?
This is one stud earring.
Thank you, Ms. Claycomb. Approaching with States 204 and 205. Do you recognize those?
Yes, ma'am. This is the bra and the bralette that was collected at autopsy.
Could you please show the jury so they can get a better picture of what we're talking about?
This is State's Exhibit 205, and this is the bra that was collected. This is State's Exhibit 204. This was the bralette.
I'm approaching with what's been marked as States 186 and 187. Do you recognize those two items, Ms. Claycomb?
This is the bra and the bralette that's packaged.
Could you, I can get you some gloves if you need some. Do you mind opening that up for me?
State's Exhibit 187, the bralette.
Is that the bralette that you collected from autopsy?
Yes.
And did you have a chance to open up States 186?
State's Exhibit 186 is the bra.
And is that the bra you collected from the autopsy?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, State moves to enter item 186, 187 in evidence.
No objection.
Ms. Claycomb, could you please show those items to the jury?
Yes, ma'am. This is State's Exhibit 186, the bra. 187, the bralette.
Handing you what's been entered into evidence states 206 through 213. Do you recognize those images?
Yes, I do.
And what do those images depict?
These are images of the shirt collected at autopsy.
And are there any, is there anything that you noticed specifically about the shirt?
Yes, ma'am. It was hard to tell the natural color of the shirt. It was saturated, the whole entire shirt was saturated with blood, so it was hard to tell the natural, original color of the shirt.
Your Honor, may I have the witness step down?
Yes.
Approaching with what's been marked as State's Exhibit 189. Do you recognize that package?
Yes, ma'am. This was the shirt collected at autopsy.
Can you do me a favor and peek inside that package before you take anything out, just to make sure?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the shirt you collected at autopsy?
It's packaged in additional white paper.
Your Honor, State moves to enter State's 189 into evidence.
Says the defense.
Without objection.
Submitted without objection.
See State's Exhibit 189. You can see it's further packaged in white paper.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Claycomb. Approaching with what's been entered as states 195 through 203. Do you recognize what's in those photographs?
Yes, ma'am, these are the photos of the sandals she was wearing.
And did you collect those at autopsy as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you notice anything about those sandals that was peculiar? What was on them? What did they look like? If you
Yes,
could also
ma'am.
show the jury, but also state the number for the record, please.
So this is an overall photo of the sandals. This is State's Exhibit 200. They were sort of a sandal with a strap at the front, and then you can see these kind of went up the back of the heel with a strap above the ankle with a buckle. And the right strap on the front was no longer attached to her foot. Both sandals were actually just dangling from the actual straps above the ankle. So this is State's Exhibit 198. You can see the front strap here appeared to be broken or damaged. And here's a close-up photo of it. State's Exhibit 201. And a better photo of it with the strap moved, State's Exhibit 202.
Approaching with what's been marked as states 188 for ID purposes. Do you recognize that item, Ms. Clayton?
Yes, ma'am, these are the shoes.
Could you, if you don't mind, just take a peek inside, put on some gloves, and just make sure.
This is also packaged in additional white paper.
Could you please undo that white paper?
Yes, ma'am, the shoes.
Are these the shoes that you collected at autopsy?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, State moves to enter states 188 into evidence.
No objection.
Enter without objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Claycomb, could you please hold up, I guess we could go one at a time, one of the shoes
Yes, ma'am.
and show the jury?
So this is the left shoe. This strap is still intact. However, it was not attached to the front of her left foot. This top strap was still buckled and attached around her ankle, and it was just dangling with the buckle. This is the right shoe. And this, you can see the strap is damaged. And same thing with the right shoe. It was attached above her ankle with the buckle around her ankle, above her ankle and her leg.
Thank you, Ms. Claycomb. And after you collected all of these items from Autopsy, what did you do with them?
They were transported back to the SLED laboratory and transferred over to Lieutenant Shank.
And is that the extent of your involvement in the case?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Examination.
Your Honor, please report. You did have a little bit more involvement in the case. Do you remember?
Yes, ma'am. That was only for autopsy that I was referring to.
So
Yes, ma'am.
follow-up, that was a follow-up incident?
Correct.
Or a follow-up scene, I think
Correct.
that's what you called it earlier.
Yes, ma'am.
And you also helped Agent Jazik, that we heard from earlier today.
Yes, ma'am.
At the search warrant of Maria Howard's house.
Correct.
And at both scenes, I'll talk to you about the autopsy first. You're not the only one there at the autopsy.
No, ma'am.
There's a medical examiner
Correct.
and an assistant to the medical examiner.
Correct.
And potentially other investigators.
Correct.
And everyone is gloved if there's any interaction at all with the...
So you're not allowed directly into the autopsy room unless you're physically collecting something. Otherwise, they will not let you stay in there. There is a viewing room that separates, so you're separated by a wall and a window, where you can then view the entire autopsy during the process.
So at any point, it would just then be either yourself or anybody actually doing the exam.
The pathologist and his assistant.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And each of those people involved wearing gloves.
Yes, ma'am.
And the medical examiner, and I'm assuming his assistant, would be wearing more protective gear. than
They are
just-
fully PPE gear, head to toe. Yes, ma'am.
And April 3rd, same thing. You're at the search warrant of Maria Howard's house.
Correct.
Your job was to take photographs.
Correct.
Agent Jazik, she took notes.
Correct.
Again, you're both wearing gloves.
Correct.
While collecting these items.
Yes, ma'am.
And you just collected the items from there, right?
Correct.
Didn't do any processing of anything
No,
there.
no analyzing. No, ma'am.
And that goes to the lab at SLED, all of those items,
Yes, ma'am. Back to the lab for analysis.
where they would do the processing and the analysis.
Correct.
Let me just check here. And I'll ask you this, you collected one earring at the autopsy, you said, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was out of the right ear.
Yes, ma'am.
You did not collect a left ear.
No, ma'am. There was none in the left ear.
And at some point, I think the fingernail pictures, that could work some indulgence. At autopsy, these fingernails were cut, right?
Yes, ma'am. Fingernail clippings were collected from both the right and left hand by the pathologist.
They were longer than that at the time, before they were cut.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That could work some indulgence. I have no further questions. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. State calls Investigator Britt.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat in the witness stand and state your full name for the record.
David Britton Dove, D-O-V-E.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And I called you Britt. Do you go by Britt?
Yes, ma'am, I do go by Britt.
And can you tell this jury what do you do for a living?
Yes, ma'am, I am currently employed with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, also known as SLED. I'm the lieutenant in charge of the Computer Crime Center at SLED. I've been employed at SLED for 13 years now. Previous to that, I've worked in law enforcement beginning in January 1999, or December 1999, excuse me, with the West Columbia Police Department, and also I've worked at the Richland County Sheriff's Department.
And you said you've been with SLED for how long?
I began with SLED in June of 2008 for a little over 13 years.
And have you always been in the same division that you are now?
Yes, ma'am. I started in computer crimes, doing investigations and digital forensics, and now I'm the lieutenant of the unit.
And can you explain to the jury what are digital forensics?
Digital forensics in our realm that we do, when we receive items in, whether it be a computer, a tower, laptop, a tablet, cell phone, GPS system, car infotainment center, DVR, servers, anything dealing with that, we will do forensics on it as far as trying to do forensic copies or images of the items, or do extractions and process those items for any information contained within.
And how do you do this? Is it different for, let me go back. Do you have to use the same process with each device, or does each device have a different process?
Each device will have a different process. If you were processing a laptop, for example, you could remove the hard drive. At that time, you would connect it to a write blocker and then process it through the software on the computer. If you're doing a cell phone, you would connect that through a software hardware, different variations, different brands of them, and from that point you would extract the information and review the extraction.
And do you get specific training on how to do this? Or have you had specific training?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
What kind of training have you had?
I am currently certified as a Cellbrite operator.
And I'm going to stop you.
Okay.
Nobody knows what Cellbrite is but you,
Okay.
so what is Cellbrite?
Cellbrite is one of the products we use, one of the forensic products we use when we extract from tablets or cell phones. It's a company that's known worldwide that is one of the ones that we use.
And I interrupted you, so you're certified on that. What else, other training do you have?
I'm also certified as a Cellbrite physical analyst. I'm also certified as an advanced smartphone analyst, both with Cellbrite. I'm also certified with Mobilize operator with them. I'm associated with the South Carolina Electronic Crimes Task Force, the FBI Cyber Working Group, and a task force member. Also the FBI InfraGuard, South Carolina Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and South Carolina Fraud Watch Coalition member. And I've received numerous trainings from Cellbrite, the FBI, United States Secret Service through their National Computer Forensic Institution.
And have you been have you been qualified as an expert in court before?
Yes, ma'am, I have approximately 6 times.
And in what area of expertise?
I've been qualified in both computer forensics and cell phone forensics.
This time, Your Honor, I'd ask for Mr. Dove to be qualified in the field of cell phone forensics.
Says offense.
No objection, Your Honor.
He's so qualified.
So, is it Analyst Dove, Lieutenant Dove? What am I supposed to call you?
I go by Lieutenant Dove or just Britt's fine.
Okay. So, Britt, can you explain to this jury, you talked about Cellbrite a little bit. Do you use that with every phone, or what do you use with phones to analyze them?
We don't use it with every phone because every phone is different. We can go to it a lot of times as kind of our first choice because we have more of that product right now. But we also have other things like XRY. We have Magnet Axiom that we can use on cell phones too. And we also had Mobilize, who used to be a standalone company, has now been bought by Cellbrite.
Okay. And how did you become in this case involving the murder of Samantha Josephson?
I was contacted on the early morning hours of the 29th to respond to the scene at Columbia Police Department regarding a missing female from USC. Once I arrived on scene, I was asked to process a cell phone. I can't remember, I believe it was a boyfriend's cell phone. I was asked to look at it while I was there at scene, trying to set up my equipment and go through that. Other things developed. At what time I was asked to respond to 600 Saluda Avenue.
And you said boyfriend's phone. Whose boyfriend were you speaking of?
It was Samantha Josephson's.
Okay. And so, what did you do when you went to Saluda Avenue?
When I went to Saluda Avenue, I stood by, I saw that there were phones that had been pulled out of the car, placed on the hood of the car. At that point, the scene was secured, so I stood by until a search warrant was obtained. At what time the search warrant was obtained and we were able to seize the items, I let Crime Scene with SLED photograph the area, and once they finished photographing and documented, I then collected the items.
Show you what's been marked that says Exhibit 331 and 330 and ask if you recognize these items.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And what are those two items?
States 331, it's marked as a cell phone in Alcatel black in color, and it was taken from the inside of the car. And then states 330, it's marked as an iPhone, cell phone pink in color, no SIM card, it was collected from the roof of the car.
And how do you know those were did you collect those items?
Yes, ma'am, I collected the items with time and dates on there of when the items were collected. Once the items were collected, they were secured in my SLED vehicle and then transported to the Computer Crime Center located on Bush River Road.
And how do you know that those items are the same items you collected?
It's my handwriting on the bag, and I also did the intake once I got back to the SLED Computer Crime Center. So once I did that, I placed the evidence label on the bag after I logged them into our evidence system.
This time, Your Honor, I'd ask to introduce State's Exhibit 330 and 331 into evidence.
Says defense. They are made.
And we will, can we start with item 330? You can go ahead and open it. You need to see it. And can you, I'm sorry, can you show it to the jury?
Yes, I'm sorry. It is an Apple iPhone. It is rose gold in color.
And is it in the same condition as you received it on March 29th? Or March 30th, I'm sorry?
The only other change to the condition of this is it was on when I received it, and it's currently off.
Okay, but it was on and working when you received it?
Yes, ma'am.
And how about item 331? You can show it to the jury as well.
331 is another cell phone. It's an Alcatel cell phone.
What is Alcatel? Is it a brand? Or
It's a
what?
brand of cell phone. It's made, I believe, by TCL.
So, for example, saying iPhone is a brand, Alcatel is just a brand of phone?
iPhone is actually the model of the Apple phone. Alcatel is the brand of the phone.
Okay. And so, what do you do, did you have any other phones to analyze?
Yes, ma'am, I did. I collected 4 phones that night.
And so I'm gonna, what do you do with all 4 phones? Do you do the same thing initially?
Yes, ma'am. When the phones come in or any piece of electronic comes into our unit, the first thing we will do is we will photograph it in the state in which we receive it in. For instance, if it has a cracked screen, it'll be documented with photographs. If it's on, it's documented. If there's other defects, they'll be documented. So the phone, all 4 phones were photographed, and then at what time I began to enter them into our evidence system. Once that got done, they printed out labels to associate the evidence number with that item. I placed the items on the bag and then began to process them.
Show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 330, 332 and ask if you recognize it.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And what is State's Exhibit 332?
They are my examination worksheets. The majority of them involve the cell phones. There's also one in here that is a forensic imaging sheet from a thumb drive that I obtained at the scene, where I did a forensic image of that to process it for any information on it.
And are all those records created by yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
And do those fairly and accurately depict the records, the reports that you made involving the phones that we're discussing?
Yes, ma'am.
Been altered in any way?
No, ma'am.
This time I'd ask to introduce State's Exhibit 332 into evidence.
Justin's here saying, Your Honor.
Response by the state.
Are these records that are kept in your normal course of business in dealing with cell phones?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
Would be my only response, Your Honor, is a hearsay exception.
Anything further?
Nothing, Your Honor.
They are admitted.
Yes, ma'am.
So what is item number 1 on your report?
Item number 1 is identified as an Apple iPhone. It's a model A1661, 32 gigabytes in size. I was not able to obtain the serial number from that one.
And I'm gonna stop you with that. Why weren't you able to get the serial number off of that one?
That phone was locked.
And what do you mean by locked?
It had a passcode on it, and I was not able to get into it to process it fully.
Well, aren't you able to just break the passcode or something?
No, ma'am, not always. We do have software and hardware to use to try to bypass passcodes. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Really depends a lot on the type of password they have. If you have a 4-digit passcode and you use all zeros, it's going to be a lot easier to get by than if you have a 6-digit, 8-digit passcode that's alphanumeric and you're putting letters and numbers and that kind of combination in there.
And item number 1, which phone is that with?
I'm sorry, repeat.
Which phone does item number 1 relate to? It's not the Alcatel phone, correct? It's the other.
No, ma'am, it's an Apple iPhone.
And whose phone was that? Did that end up belonging to?
I believe that was seized from Mr. Rowland's person at the scene.
All right. And that one you stated already had a passcode. Is that the same as the password?
Yes, ma'am.
And is a passcode just the way to lock the phone? Is it sometimes your fingerprint, your face, or is it always going to be a number?
It didn't always have to be a number. It could be alphanumeric also, especially with the more advanced security features. You can now use numbers, or you can change it and use numbers that are more complex and put letters in there.
Okay. So it can be a combination of things. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
And you stated that that was locked.
Yes, ma'am.
And what about item number 2?
Item number 2 was also an Apple iPhone. It was an 8 Plus, 256 gigabyte in size, and it has an IMEI that I was able to record on it of 35482915876638.
And what, you just read that number. What is that? Is that like a serial number? What is that?
It's an International Mobile Equipment Identification Number.
And which phone does that go to?
That goes to the Apple iPhone that was collected at the scene.
Is that the one that you just showed to the jury?
No, ma'am. That was item 3 of my report that I showed to the jury. That was the rose gold.
All right. So let's go to number 3. What is that one?
Item number 3 is an Apple iPhone, an 8 Plus, 64 gigabyte in size. It has an IMEI number of 35301009504138.
And what phone does who does this phone belong to?
That was one that was collected from the car. It was the rose gold one.
Okay. And you were able to give us that IMEI number. Why were you able to get that?
That phone was not locked, and it was on when I was able to process it.
And what about item number 4?
Item number 4 was the Alcatel phone that I showed. It was a model 5056N. It was 4 gigabytes in internal size, and it had an IMEI number of 0146500068595546.
And again, was this phone locked or unlocked?
This phone was locked, but I was able to bypass the lock code.
And how were you able to bypass the lock on this one?
We used Celebrate with that phone, and there were vulnerabilities that Celebrate has found. They were able to bypass the lock code on it.
And that, I believe you said this, but that led you to be able to get the IMEI number?
Yes, ma'am.
Does that allow you to get all information off the phone as well?
Yes, ma'am. I was able to do a physical extraction on that phone.
So let's talk about physical extraction. What is a physical extraction?
A physical extraction, cell phones can be done 3 different ways usually. You can get a physical extraction. It's going to get you pretty much all the information. It's going to get you hidden files. It's going to get you deleted information. It's going to gather your most information. There's also what's called a file system extraction. It's going to be a step back from the physical. It's going to get you some of the deleted information, but not all the hidden information. And then there's a logical extraction. Logical is going to get you the least amount. Usually, think about a logical would be looking at what you can see going through your phone. Not always the deleted stuff that may be there or the other things operate in the background, such as databases and things. A physical extraction will get you the file systems, it'll get you the logical stuff you can see, plus some of the hidden files you are not able to see on your phone.
So I'm going to start first with the rose gold iPhone. Were you able to get into that phone and get the physical extraction from it?
On that phone, I was able to get in and do a full file system. At this time, I'm not able to and don't have the ability to do full physical extractions on Apple i products. Full file systems are the largest we're able to gather on that, and I was able to process that because there was no password on it, and I was able to get by the backups on there.
And so based on that, what were you able to get from that phone?
I got a ton of information from the phone. I could gather location information because it was turned on the phone. I was able to collect chats, MMS messages, internet history searches, call logs, contact lists, photos, videos, and a variety of things.
And were you able to determine who owned that phone, who that phone belonged to?
I was able to acquire a name for the user account of that phone.
And what was that name?
The Apple ID is identified as SAMIJBBALL@AOL.com. I was also able to get names from computers that phone had been synced with also.
And what names were you able to get?
It was Samantha's MacBook Pro /user, Samantha Josephson was one of them. Sammy's MacBook Pro 421, user Sammy Josephson.
And you stated that you were able to get location information. Can you explain to the jury what you mean by location information?
Yes, ma'am. When you turn your location information on a phone, when you download a new app, sometimes when you pull up the news sites, it'll say turn on your location information for more accurate, news or weather, what have you. She had her location information turned on the phone. It's also how you could use it to do Find My Friends, Find My iPhones, things like that. So what I was able to do with the extraction was to go in and look at the location information. Then I could take that information and I could export it as a KML file, which that file you're able to put into Google Earth, and it will drop pins at every place it has the latitude and longitude that phone's been seen at.
And were you able to do that with this phone?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
And while we're setting up, I think you said this, but can you do this if the phone is off? Has been turned off by the user?
If the phone is turned off, it's not going to be transmitting. It's not going to reach out to the towers. It's not going to reach out with the GPS coordinates. It's not going to reach out for data. So when a phone's off, you're not going to be able to record those locations. If the phone's on and the location services are turned on, with the exception of being in a building, like a heavily concreted or steel building that's going to interfere with the signals, you would be able to obtain that.
And you stated you were able to locate and put things on pins on Google Earth, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I exported the file for the location information and dropped it into Google Earth, and it revealed a map with pins on it with time, dates, and locations.
And is this that map?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and for demonstrative purposes, I'm going to make it a little bigger, or move it. Can you tell the jury what time it started showing locations that you took down and put on this map?
I believe the time was at 1:58 a.m. on the 29th. I limited the scope of it because there were just so many information points and location points on the phone. It would have just been hard because it would have tracked everywhere that phone has been. So I limited it to the time that I was given as far as the last time Ms. Josephson was seen to when it stopped and we recovered the phone on the 30th.
So when you first started doing the pins, because it's hard to show on this map exactly where it is, where is it?
It's in the 5 points area.
does it stay in the 5 points area?
For a period of time it does, and then about the 210, 212 mark, it starts to move out of 5 points into the Rosewood area.
So if I move my finger, is this what we're talking about, moving to the right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and all of these pins, as you see them like that, those are the different locations of our phone, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you know for sure that that's locations and not, we've heard about towers, what is the difference between a tower and this GPS actual location?
Those are our GPS coordinates. They did not have to interact with a tower, a cell phone tower, as far as a cell phone tower collects information from the cell phone, and then you would triangulate the towers to be able to find the location of the cell phone. This is what came off the phone, the GPS coordinates of it.
So which is more reliable, this or the tower information?
They both have a certain degree of inconsistency. GPS locations, if you think about it with your phone or your GPS system, you can be driving along and all of a sudden it tells you to take a right turn and 500 feet and you look and you're 2 feet away from it. Because sometimes there's lag in GPS. So that way there is going to be a certain degree that it's not going to, you can't say it's 100% that spot, but it puts you in the area within probably less than a mile.
And that's what I mean, if it tells you that you're downtown, if you're not out in Chapin.
No, ma'am.
And so it continues to stay in the downtown Columbia area, is that fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
And when does it stop tracking?
It's about 2:33, I believe, a.m. In the South Ott area was the last pin I was able to see.
Okay, and so where these pins are is where it stops?
Yes, ma'am.
And again, why would it stop?
Most likely, it would have been turned off. It could have run out of power and gone dead, but it would have lost power or been turned off.
And does it ever come back on?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
And I'm not gonna pull that one up right now, but where does it come back on at?
And it comes back on also in the downtown area around
what time?
about the 8:46 a.m. time. Stays on, travels out towards Monticello Road around the 11:30 time frame that morning. Then it goes off and you have another gap of time, and then it shows up later that evening on the 30th, where I have it going down Leesburg Road. I see it travel down Leesburg Road into the Mountain Brook area.
All right. And so in order for you to see this information, the phone is either off, is it off or on?
Yes, ma'am. It would have to be on to be able to get that information.
And so, did you provide this information to anyone else in law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am. I provided the information to the case agents with SLED and also the Columbia Police Department. I took the information, the location information, and created an Excel spreadsheet and put down addresses in the area of that in the hopes of locating additional cameras or other information so they could see where the phone had traveled.
And I'm now going to move on to a different phone, okay? You also were able to get information from a phone connected with Maria Howard, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, I
And which
was.
phone was that?
That is item number 8.
And what type of phone was her phone?
Give me 1 second. Her phone is a ZTE phone. It's a model N9519. It's a 16 gig in size with a serial number of 320775291418.
And how did you use the same extraction process you just spoke to the jury about to get information from her phone?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And were you able to get all the information from her phone?
No, ma'am. Her phone was an Android-based phone, and it didn't interact the same with the Cellbrite machine I was using as the Apple phone did. So it would require a lot of information, but not get a full physical extraction from it.
Were you able to get her text messages around the time of March 28th and 29th?
Yes, ma'am. I got call logs, text messages, some images, videos. I wasn't able to get all the databases and the additional kind of hidden areas.
And I want to you recognize it?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And what is that?
This is the extraction report, part of the extraction report I ran for item number 8, which is the ZTE for Ms. Howard.
And is that a record that's kept in the normal course of your business as far as it concerns the extraction report?
Yes, ma'am. Once we do the extraction of the report, we'd go through and produce this type of report.
And has it been changed in any way?
No, ma'am.
This time we'd ask to introduce State's Exhibit number 333 into evidence.
Object on hearsay grounds, Your Honor.
Submitted over objection.
Thank you. And I'm not going to go into all of this, but I will ask you, on these records, it says, for example, the first one says 6/2/2019. Is that the correct date?
Yes, ma'am, it is. But the way they do the dates is they will put the day first, then the month, then the year. That's the way the format is when I laid this report out.
So instead of being what I would think is June 2nd, 2019, it's actually February 2nd, 2019?
Yes, ma'am, correct.
So I'm just going to show you a couple of pages from that report. Can you see from up there?
No, ma'am.
You can come down here then. I'm just going to need you to keep your voice up.
Yes, ma'am.
So what does, I'm going to highlight it, what does where it says 964, what does that mean?
That's just an identification number that's placed on the report, just a way to keep track of it. It's something the report generates when it makes itself.
And here in this column where, oh shoot, sorry, there you go. In this column where it says a name, what does that mean?
That's a name would be identified in the phone. When you put a contact in your phone, you assign it a name, and that's what that would reflect, is that phone number next to it, and then it associates with that name. That's something that the user would have put in there.
And sticking with the highlighted one, what is the phone number that's listed?
The phone number is 803-862-8267.
And at what time is that text sent?
It's showing that it's sent, according to the report, it's 29/03/2019, which would actually be March 29th, 2019 at 5:31:31 a.m.
And what does the, where it says GMT -4, what does that represent?
Computer systems, especially when you talk about servers, they're what's called UTC or GMT time, which is universal time, and it's always at 0. To figure out the time zones, you would back it up or move it forward depending on where you move from that 0 point. So what happens is, since we are 4 hours or 5 hours behind depending on daylight savings time, this is reflective of the -4 because we, at that time of the year, we were 4 hours behind the UTC time. So that's why you would see -4, which puts it in our time zone, Eastern Standard Time
So
zone.
what time did this message get sent?
At 5:31:31.
And I'm saying it was sent, is that represented in here?
Yes, ma'am, it shows the 2 columns that it was sent. The phone was used and was an outgoing message.
And it says WYA.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any idea what WYA means?
No, ma'am, not in this context.
And I'm going to go down to 967. Again, what is the phone number associated on this line?
It's 803-862-8267.
And what time, what day and time is that one sent?
It's also the same date on March 29th, 2019 at 7:01:22 a.m.
And again, is it sent?
It's sent from the phone. It's an outgoing message.
And what does it say?
It says, "Babe, I'm late ASF for work."
And that's sent from Maria Howard's phone to Nate's phone?
Yes, ma'am.
And then the next one, what number is it sent to?
It's 1-803-514-3239.
And how has she labeled that number?
That number is labeled as mom's.
And what time does she send that one?
It's sent on the 29th, 2019 at 8:03:17 a.m. It's also showing sent messages. It's also showing phone and outgoing.
And what does it say?
Baby tried, LOL, my shirt wet, ASF. He will not be wasting clothes, ever. Have a good day, Mom, love you.
So I'm gonna go to the next one. All right. Me and Adobe are not friends, so we're gonna try this again. There we go. I'm gonna go to the next one. And is these, when I pull it up, I'm gonna ask you, are these still the same reports that we were just talking about?
Yes, and you can see from the top up here that it's got the examination report, the ZTE, GSM, same model number from the previous one.
So this is the same Maria Howard's phone again?
Yes, ma'am, it's Maria Howard's phone, just another page of the report.
And I want you to go down to this one here. What does it say down here at the bottom?
It's in column 1112. It's phone number 843-615-9625, and it's titled Brother Baby, and it's 3/30/2019 at 12:38:25 p.m.
And what does it say? Was it sent?
It was sent from the phone and showing an outgoing message.
And what does it say?
It says Chloe's shoes got blood on them.
And last one on this one. From the top line, can you do the same thing with that one?
Yes, ma'am. This is also from the same report from the ZTE phone, same model number. It's 1113 is the column number, and it's going to be 843-615-9625. It's also to Brother Baby. It's 3/30/2019 at 12:38:42 p.m. It's sent from the phone. It's outgoing, and the message is from when she got in the car last night.
And then what is 1115?
It's going to be from 843-615-9625, Brother Baby, 3/30/2019, 12:43:01 p.m. It's showing sent from the phone outgoing. It says, it's on the bottom of the shoes. You ain't got to buy new shoes.
That you may have seen. So, I'm going to go back to some of the other phones. Were you able to get any phones that you then associated with the defendant?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And were you able to break into either of those phones to gain the same GPS location information that you got off Samantha's phone?
No, ma'am. The iPhone that came from the defendant at the scene, I was not able to get into, so I was not able to obtain all the GPS information.
Why is that?
It's because it still contained the passcode, and I was not able to bypass the passcode and get a full extraction.
Okay. And what about the other phone?
It was item 4. I was able to get into to bypass the passcode and obtain information on that.
And what were you able to get off of that phone as far as location information?
On location information, I was able to obtain some location information, not a tremendous amount because it was an Android-based system. It didn't have the locations pool like they did for the Apple, so it was very limited in locations.
And I want to go back to, and I want to make sure we're talking about the same phone. When I hand you a stack of records, and trust me, we're not going through them. to show you what's been marked for ID. It states Exhibit 334. And ask if you recognize those.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And what are those records?
These records are from the timeline that is produced in my report when I did the extraction for item 4,
Which is which phone again?
which is the Alcatel phone.
And is that report one that's kept in the normal course of your business as the records from the phone?
Yes, ma'am. It's produced, once we do the extraction, we produce this record, and then we'll review this record a lot of times when we're looking through the phone to give us indications for time and dates and activities.
At this time, you're not asking to introduce state's exhibit number 334 into evidence.
You're not to object on hearsay grounds and our previous objection. Same response from the state, Your Honor.
Pardon?
Same response from the state. This is a business record exception.
What was the previous response?
This is a business record exception that's kept in the normal course of their business. He testified to that, Your Honor.
It's submitted over objection.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask you a little bit about how you generate these records. All right, so when you get the report, is it like this, a whole big stack, or how do you get it?
When we usually generate a report, because as you can see with that volume of paper for just the timeline, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll generate it as an HTML report, which makes it easy because it's all linked together on a disk so that an investigator can click on it to go to different sections they want and be able to look through it a lot easier without having thousands of pages to try to go back and forth and thumb through.
And I'm going to ask you a little bit that, I'm going a little bit back and forth. This Alcatel phone, how do you know that a phone is on and working? Or if you're just looking at the reports?
If I'm looking at the report, there are things I'm looking for. If a phone's on when we get it and receive it and we go to process it, a lot of times the last things we can look at on there may show the time and date at which we start our processing on there. Other thing is a lot of times phones, especially Apple's, Alcatel has a few of it with some of their things. It has powering events on there. For example,
stop you. What's a powering event?
For example, if you go to cut your phone on or off, that's a powering event. With a phone, if you pick up a smartphone and it's off and the screen's dark and you go to pick it up and it lights up, that's considered a powering event. If you turn it sometimes, if you're holding it straight up and you turn your hand over and it rotates over so that it goes and moves, that's considered a powering event. Some phones and some systems will record more of those than others. Some will not record all of that. You can also look in the databases too and see activity that's occurring at different times that may not be pulled out in a report all the time.
And was this phone, the Alcatel that you took, was it working?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
And how do you know that?
When I go to do the examination on this phone, I took photos of the phone when it was hooked up, which show that it's on with a passcode on there, so that I knew it was on and working at that point. Also, too, I was able to go into some of the databases that the report produced and look at them. One of them is a Power Up Reason text file that's in there, and it shows that at 3:20 on March 29th, 2019, there was a reboot of the phone. It also shows that at 2:58 a.m. on the 29th of 2019, that a keypad activity was initiated.
What's a keypad activity?
It could have been anything. It could have been somebody's finger hit it. It does not necessarily mean that somebody's punching numbers in, but somebody hit the keypad for some reason, or something hit the keypad.
And what time was that at?
That was at 2:58:30 a.m. on March 29th, 2019.
All right. And I believe you stated this, but was this phone locked or unlocked?
It was locked when I received it.
And so what does that mean? In order to access the phone, what do you need?
We had to bypass the lock code or either have the lock code and unlock it.
And so if that phone was sitting here, would I be able to use it and just pick it up and start using it?
No, ma'am.
What would I need?
You would need the passcode to get into it.
Any other way to get that phone to work without that passcode?
No, ma'am. Not that I'm aware of.
And how long does the phone have to, does the passcode phone automatically lock, or is there a function that it only locks after so many minutes?
I found in there in the settings security XML file of the phone that the lock screen locked after a timeout, that it locked after 30 minutes.
So what does that mean in layman's terms?
That after it times out, in which I found the timeout to be 1 minute for the phone, for the screen, that once it goes off, that after that 30 minutes after that, that phone locks automatically whether you interact with it or not.
So is it fair to say that if the phone sat still for 30 minutes, minute 31, you couldn't use the phone without the passcode?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to show you one particular record from those records. Before I go into it, did you provide any of this information that you downloaded from this phone to anyone?
Yes, ma'am. It was provided to investigators and then a discovery copy was made.
It was given to other people at SLED?
Yes, ma'am.
And let me ask you this. With the phone, were you able to get any information in order to do cell towers off the Alcatel or the other phone that associated with Mr. Rowland?
No, ma'am. I don't do cell tower cell records.
Who does that?
At the time, I believe it was Special Agent Eric Grabsky.
So can you see this, or do you need to step down?
It'd be easier if I could step down so hard to see.
And is this the same extraction report as a page from the report that we've just put into evidence?
Yes, ma'am. It's from item 4. It's a Cellbrite report.
And is
from the
this,
timeline?
I'm sorry, from the Alcatel phone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so what does this mean here, what that's highlighted?
This is from the timeline report. It's showing that there was a web search, or the web was pulled up on 3/29/2019 at 4:36:05 a.m. You can see on this one, it did a UTC -4 instead of a GMT -4. So it's still set from 0 to our time zone.
And what was pulled up?
And the description says trending porn videos of the day, mobile HD porn videos, spank bang.
And why is this significant for you?
Because at this time, at 4:36 a.m., the only way somebody would have been able to pull that up and to access that would have had to either know the passcode to be able to unlock the phone to get to that Chrome search, or not search, but that Chrome tab to be able to open.
Thank you. You can take your seat. And just to be clear, that you just read from, that's from the phone associated with him.
That's from the phone associated with Mr. Rowland.
Thank you. No further questions.
By the defense.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well. So you testified you received 4 phones on the 30th
Yes,
of
ma'am.
March, that's right? And one was an iPhone.
Yes, ma'am.
It was reported to have been taken from Mr. Rowland at the time that he was arrested.
Yes, ma'am.
And you were able to do a partial extraction on that phone.
Yes, ma'am,
Is that right?
correct.
And we didn't, I don't think that that was actually admitted into evidence. Is that right?
Correct, I didn't see those
Okay.
reports.
We have an extraction from Maria Howard's phone,
Yes, ma'am.
and that was item 8.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we have an extraction from the Alcatel phone.
Yes, ma'am.
And we went through some records here on for the Alcatel phone.
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
And the number associated with that one is the 862 number.
I would have to see the record again. I don't remember right offhand.
I don't know how to. So I'm going to grab what states 334 and see if you are.
That would be, not that. That would be the Alcatel phone. I believe the one you were asking about is item 8. Of Miss Howard's phone?
I'm talking about the Alcatel phone.
Okay.
Did
That would be those.
May not be able to tell from just this timeline. Whatever. I'm gonna take it apart here for a second.
Ladies and gentlemen, stand for a moment.
Thank you. Apologize, Your Honor.
All right. Questions of the witness?
Yes, Your Honor, I apologize. I'm looking for something specific here. I will, this is an extensive timeline here. I apologize. You're familiar, I asked you about the iPhone that was taken from Mr. Rowland on March 30th.
Yes, ma'am.
And you were able to do a partial extraction of that phone.
Yes, ma'am.
And the number associated with that phone begins with 566, is that right?
I'm not sure offhand. Let's see if I can refer to my report. Let's see. Yes, ma'am. It looks like it begins with 566.
803-556.
It's actually 803-566-3692.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This timeline goes back to, starts on February 15th, is that right?
Yes, ma'am, that stack out there.
I am getting to it, I promise. And like you testified, someone just opening the web browser would pull up maybe a tab that was open in the web browser.
Correct.
Not that someone was actually searching out, making an actual search of that website.
Correct. If it was still open and it was just closed out and reopened, it was still there, it would pull back up.
And the last time that website was accessed on this phone prior to that time would be in this report as well.
Yes, ma'am.
And if someone doesn't save the phone number in the phone, there would be no contact name next to that number, right?
Correct.
Beg the court's indulgence. I apologize, Your Honor. Okay. While I'm waiting on that, we'll come back to that. I will ask you, so you were, as far as the iPhone is concerned, that was taken from Mr. Rowland on the night of the 30th.
Yes, ma'am.
That was a partial extraction done, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And the GPS information that was obtained from that, there was none, is that what you're saying?
On that one, I believe it was maybe 3 locations that came from that one. Because it was a partial extraction, I couldn't get the full file system, so I was not able to get all the information.
Okay. And the Alcatel, you said is kind of the same thing. There's some location information, but not a lot.
Yes,
Right.
ma'am. It grabs some location information from that. It's a different operating system, so it operates and acts differently.
And the Alcatel you said was Android.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And if a phone is connected to Wi-Fi, a wireless internet connection, it would show up on that timeline.
It would show the Wi-Fi connection, possibly.
Right. It would
Yeah.
show that it had been connected to Wi-Fi at a certain point, and maybe when it disconnected.
A lot of times it can show that. It can also show the first connection and the last connection to it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was connected to that Wi-Fi the whole time. It could have been different times because that connection was auto-saved in there with their password.
what I'm looking
Okay.
at. Thank you. Appreciate your patience. All right. Okay, here we are. I want to show you again, State's Exhibit 334. This is page 287, and if you could please start here at this item number, if you can tell the jury, right here.
I wasn't sure which item number you were pointing to, if it was 63102 or 63103. This one? Okay.
Both of them.
All right. At 63102, it shows that it's an incoming call on 3/15/2019 at 12:15:31 a.m. It's coming from 1-803-566-3692, and it looks like it's a duration of about 23 seconds. Would you like me to do the next one too?
Yes, please.
The next one is 63103 is the column number. It's also an incoming call at 3/15/2019 at 12:22:35 a.m. It's coming from 1-803-566-3692, and it looks like the duration is 1 minute and 41 seconds.
And again, the phone number associated with item 1, which is the iPhone taken from Mr. Rowland on March 30th, is that 803-566 number that you just talked about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so Mr. Rowland's iPhone is calling Mr. Rowland's Alcatel phone on March 15th?
Yes, ma'am, according to these records.
And do you see where that number shows up again on that day?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Are those phone calls, text messages?
It's a phone call on 3/15/2019 at 2:10:53 a.m. It lasts 35 seconds.
So a phone call from the 803-566-3692 number, the iPhone number, calling the Alcatel number on 3/15/2019.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have one more question for you. The item 8, the phone that you processed that belonged to Maria Howard,
Yes, ma'am.
I think you testified you weren't able to get all of the information from her phone.
Correct.
So you don't have location information for her phone?
No, ma'am, I don't believe I do. I have to check the report and see. No, ma'am, I wasn't able to get a full picture of that information.
And again, the date that Nate Rowland's iPhone is calling Nate Rowland's Alcatel phone is March 15th, 2019.
Yes, ma'am.
And this incident date was March 29th, 2019.
Yes, ma'am.
So about 2 weeks before.
Yes, ma'am, roughly 14 days.
Beg the court's indulgence. That's all I have. Thank you.
And redirect.
Beg the court's indulgence. Just a couple of questions. You've been downloading phones for how many years?
I started in June of 2008.
And have you ever, in all that time as doing these cell phones, have you heard of somebody having more than one phone?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you seen them call their own phone?
Yes, ma'am.
Several reasons to call your own phone?
Yes, ma'am, could be various reasons.
Could you call it when it's lost?
Yes, ma'am.
How about to check your messages?
Yes, ma'am.
And that could happen, right?
Yes, ma'am.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Anything further?
Yes, Your Honor, just briefly, you testified that that one of the calls was around a minute and a half or so,
It was, I believe, a minute 41, possibly. Yes, ma'am.
and somebody would talk to themselves for a minute and 41 seconds?
I can't answer that because I have no idea if they listened to something or they talked to something.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. You may step down.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for the day. Thank you very much. I'll meet you back at 9:30. Please do not be exposed to any information concerning the case outside of the courtroom, and do not discuss the case with anyone or allow anyone to discuss it with you in your presence. And we'll see you at 9:30 tomorrow morning.